All right. Welcome everyone to today's webinar with Vir from RangeMe. We're really excited to be having this webinar today. RangeMe is an important partner of Startup CPGs and a really great partner of many of the brands in our community already. And so, if you're already in the Slack community, great. If you're not, make sure that you're signed up for Startup CPG's newsletter, and you'll find the link to join the Slack in that first email that you get. But without further ado, I'm going to flip things over to Vir. Vir, if you want to introduce yourself and give a little background on your time at RangeMe, and then go ahead and dive in.
Thanks, Peter. I appreciate it. Welcome, everybody. I see the number of participants jumping up, so that's always exciting. Appreciate you spending your time with us. I know as brand founders and owners, you got a ton of things to do, so I don't take your time lightly. Quick introduction, I was one of the founding team members here at RangeMe, so this is going back about 9.5 years ago now. If you ever wondered, and I think we actually used it as a trivia question last time around, so I can't repeat that as a trivia question, but we're called RangeMe because we originated in Australia. This was again around 9.5, 10 years ago. And in Australia and the UK, they call them range reviews instead of category reviews. So you typically go up to a retailer and say, when's your next range review for snacks, for example, which is why the name. Today, I'm most passionate about and spend most of my time with emerging brands, helping them understand the platform, everything from what the platform can truly do, how it's one tool of many tools you need in this industry to succeed and grow, and make sure that everyone becomes an expert in using it. Think of it like LinkedIn for CPG, where it's brand to buyer connection only. And the more you use it and the more you put into it, most likely and most often, the more you get out of it. So we're going to cover a couple of different things today. We're going to kick off with the buyer side of things. That's a view you typically don't get to see. You have to be a verified, vetted buyer to be able to do that. And so it's really good for me to be able to share that with all of you. In that process, we'll look at the best practices, what the brands that really stand out and get most success from RangeMe are doing, how they're using it and all the different features available to you, what features you get at the different tiers of membership we have, and then of course our special Startup CPG offers, which are better than anything else out there. So I'm going to start sharing right away. And after I go through the buyer side, I will open it up a little bit for some questions, and then we'll go back onto the brand side. So high level, if you haven't heard of RangeMe before, we're the leading product discovery, sourcing, and purchasing platform. Retailers and suppliers or brands use RangeMe to connect. Retail buyers use it to discover brands, and brands use it to get discovered by those retail buyers. We work with retailers that are large national, regional, and mid-tier, all the way down to independents. We also work with non-traditional retailers. So think of things like food service, hotels, universities. United and Delta Airlines use us to find products. Anyone that carries packaged goods, we're happy for them to use RangeMe to discover you, because then it increases the odds and chances of your discovery. For the large national chains, the relationship we have with them is from a corporate level down. And here are some examples of that. So you go to Albertsons to become a new supplier. They prefer if you create a RangeMe profile. It doesn't mean it's the only way to get in touch with them. Of course, you should be doing other things as well, but it's one of their preferred ways. Keeps everything in a standardized format, means they don't have to solicit PDFs or Excel files or digital sell sheets from other people. It becomes your digital sell sheet. Another example is CVS. CVS also recommends that you onboard with RangeMe to get discovered by their buyers. And a few other examples, Thrive Market's another one. So if you wanted to submit your brand info, it typically asks you to create a RangeMe profile to do so. All of that leads to the category mapping, which is the most critical piece of the platform and always has been. And that is every single buyer, no matter who he, she, or they are set up to only look at categories that they actively manage. Of course, the larger the retailer, the smaller the category management, and the smaller the retailer, the larger the assortment. So an independent buyer would be looking at all categories typically. A large national chain buyer has their specific categories that they're responsible for. Food and beverage, beauty, personal care, health and wellness are the three largest. They comprise about 70% of the entire platform and the buyers as well. And then the other 30% is all the other general merchandise categories. So think of things like home, pet, baby, housewares, sports, outdoor, etc. Within food and beverage, it of course gets even more granular. So food has these subcategories underneath. And this is where pro tip number one comes in. Per product that you list on RangeMe, you can select up to 2 categories. And I often get asked or come across companies that have products that could be in both. Like you could be a snack bar, but you could also be a protein bar. Select 2 categories so that your coverage is as exhaustive as it can be. So that way, let's say there's 2 different buyers, you want them both to be able to see a product and not just one or the other. For this example, I'm selecting snacks as my categories. So for this, I'm a snacks buyer. If I've done this, I never have to repeat this process. And now when I log on to RangeMe, I see every single brand that has at least one of their SKUs in the snacks category. Right off the bat, you can see how competitive it is. 7,300 brands with getting close to 17,000 products. And now the challenge, but also the fun for me as a buyer starts. And that is, how do I find what I'm looking for and how do I discover true innovation? The most obvious way is for me to start scrolling down. And as I scroll through, right off the bat, you can tell that brands that have the right kind of cover image really stand out. And we've seen very clearly that they are the ones most likely to get that immediate buyer attention. So that top banner image you're looking at really makes a massive difference. One of the things we were really particular about when we created RangeMe was to help emerging brands get a level playing field. So it doesn't matter if you're a $100,000 a year brand or a $10 million a year brand, the size of your profile on RangeMe is always the same. It doesn't mimic a traditional trade show where you might have a 10 by 10 next to a 100 by 100, and it's really unbalanced in that sense. So when I scroll down, each brand has the exact same size tile. Some immediate examples to showcase where I think the brands have done a phenomenal job in their cover image are here. And this is recorded, but if all of you want to take screenshots, feel free to. We're not really looking at any sensitive info from any of these brands. Highlighted the packaging, called out the unique attributes and selling points, and made sure that they have the logos of the key certifications they have as well. Buyers used to spend 5 to 6 minutes per profile on RangeMe. Now, with all the other things they're going through and still recovering from the craziness and chaos of COVID, they're spending about 1.5 minutes. So as much as you can give them in this cover image makes a massive difference in terms of their likelihood to ask you for a sample or send you a direct message. They can still scroll down and get more granular info, but as much as you can put above the fold is the way to go. This is one great example. Here's another. You know her. We all love her. Great advocate of RangeMe and also a massive advocate of emerging brands, Clara. So she's done a great job with her profile here. Another one here where I think they've done a really good job in not only calling out, again, highlighting the packaging, which is key, but also calling out the unique selling points. And a few other examples to look at. Love all these brands, by the way, have tried their product personally, big fan. Again, as a buyer, within 30 seconds, I kind of have at least the basics I need to decide whether I want to pursue a conversation or have a next steps call. And the last few examples that I want to share as well. Again, really quick, easy to see, highlight packaging at the forefront, because that's what buyers want to see, but then also call out unique selling points and show the key differentiators like your certification. And now we go back to the discovery piece. So if I wasn't scrolling down, the other way that I typically will search as a buyer is by keyword. So I can come in here and put in low sugar, And this is where I think of it like your RangeMe SEO, the words you use in your description, unique selling points, or your product information are really critical. Because if a buyer types in those phrases and you don't have them in your profile, you won't show up. Some of the mistakes I see sometimes are brands setting up their profiles mimicking their D2C websites. Whereas here, since it's only retail buyers, you want to keep it simple and keep it to all those unique attributes. So an example is, instead of the best tasting protein bar, you'd probably want to put in low sugar, all natural, gluten-free protein bar. Just one of the examples of how you should think of the wording and your retail buyer specific SEO. Same thing if I wanted to put in high protein. Again, if you have that in your description or unique selling points, then you're going to show up in that search when the buyer types that in. In terms of the order, because that's another question I get asked a lot, we have several membership tiers. One of them is called our premium tier, and it allows you the ability to get this green check mark, which is you have the bare basics for retail shelves, but you're also paying for our premium service. On average, depending on the category, you're looking at about 8 to 12% only of brands being verified. And so no matter what the buyers do, it's the verified brands they see first. And quite often they'll start by going, 7,300 brands is a lot for me to look at. Let me filter and start with RangeMe verified only. And now I'm looking at 600. It's like showing up on page 1 or 2 instead of showing up on page 10. So it does make a difference, but it doesn't mean that your chances of discovery disappear if you're not. You can still get discovered if you're on the lower tiers as well. And that's where the quality of your profile, the SEO, and the retail words you use are really important. In addition to that, buyers have about 45 different touch points that they can use to filter. They can filter by distribution. So if you are working with distributors, it's important to put that in. Let's say I'm Publix and I only want to pull from KeHE. I might come in here and I might type in KeHE. And if you work with KeHE, but you don't have that on your profile, you now won't show up on that search. So putting all the most up-to-date info is really critical. Same with certifications. I can come in here and say, I only want to look at products that are non-GMO project verified. And right off the bat, within 5 seconds, I have that list. But it's only as good as the info you've put on and have self-reported. We also partner with all the top certifying bodies. So we exchange database info every quarter. So we're verifying and vetting certifications. So when the buyers look through it, they know that it's as up to date as possible. And we're continuing to make it easier for brands to update their profiles as well. Location is a huge filter. In the last few years, we've seen local and regional become really important to buyers. Everyone's learned their mistakes, or at least is learning their mistakes from having empty store shelves. And so regional retailers in particular are going, I'd rather get products from brands that are local to me because it's less likely for disruption in terms of supply chain than getting something from across the country. So we've seen a lot of smaller retailers come in here and go, you know what? I only want to look at California-based brands. And then that pulls from, again, the location you put in when you created your profile. And that's all well and good if you know what you're looking for. But what if you don't, which is what most buyers don't? They're here to find innovative, trending products. We've put together retail trends, very similar to when you're on Netflix or Hulu, and you've got different collections that you can browse. Trending on Instagram goes by growth in followers. So it doesn't matter if you don't have 10 million followers. If you're growing quickly, you will show up automatically. We've been partnered with NielsenIQ for over 8 years now. So as a buyer, I can come in and look at the top performing brands, obviously on RangeMe in this category that I'm looking at. And I not only see their RangeMe profile, but I'll see the NielsenIQ sales data for the category and then specific sales data for the brand itself when I'm scrolling through. and it comes straight from NIQ, and buyers tend to enjoy using that. If you're not selling a lot and you don't have NIQ sales data, that's okay too. Remember, buyers also use RangeMe to find the next emerging brands before they started selling a lot in competitor retailers. The trending on RangeMe collection is very popular. That's automatic. It goes based off of what other buyers on RangeMe are doing. So if you're getting seen a lot and interacted with a lot by other buyers, you show up here. If you win any awards or have won some in the last few years, SoFi's, Nexties, Shelfies, BevNets, you name it, let us know. We'll add you to the award-winning brands collection. And then a couple of others that we see a lot of uptake on are sustainability. That goes based on your keywords and certifications. Recyclable, 1% for the planet, fair trade, compostable, things like that. If you have that in your attributes or certifications, you'll show up in this collection. Startup brands is a huge one. It's been very, very popular since we started this about a year ago. If your brand was founded 3 or fewer years ago, you show up in this collection. When you've set up your profile, there's a question that says year founded. And then based on that, it puts you automatically in here. And supplier diversity, something I personally am very passionate about, but we also try and do our best to make it easier for the buyers to find. Buyers don't know all the different certifications between NMSDC and WeBank and Navoba. And so we group them together. So in one click, I can come in here and I know that at least based on RangeMe's info that you have put on as a brand, 340 snack brands have at least one supplier diversity certification. And it's very easy for me to look at this collection now, instead of having to come in here into the certifications and guess all the different ones that might comprise supplier diversity. So those are the key pieces from the buyer's perspective. I do want to pause. Peter, maybe we can look at the questions, see if there are any, and also solicit any questions from any of you right now.
Yeah, if you guys have questions, we have a few that have come in, but if you guys have questions as we're going through, please use the Q&A feature on Zoom to surface those. So far, all the questions, well, let's start with an easy one. As a brand, can you see the profile of other brands?
You cannot, no. So that's why this view that we're looking at right now is really good for you. And I hope you take away as much as you can from it, because only vetted, verified buyers have access to this side, which allows them to see all the different brands. We also have about 7 to 10 top distributors that use us on the buyer side. So KeHE, UNFI, Pod Foods, Cisco, McLean, Gordon's, and a couple of others. And so only they will be able to see other brands.
Perfect. And then the other questions we have so far really kind of center around the pricing tiers and what you get access to. So the first question is, doesn't the verified feature advantage bigger brands over emerging brands? Vir, do you want to take that?
Yeah, very good question. So verification, and this is a good segue for me to share the different plans we have, is part of Premium and Pro. So it starts at the Premium tier, which is $13.99 a year. As a reminder too, and we'll recap this at the end of this webinar as well, our partnership with Startup CPG allows you to get the Premium tier at $9.99, or the Pro tier, which actually comes with guaranteed meetings, which I'll cover in a few minutes, at $11.99. So that's a massive discount. And even though I know funds are always tight, and I would never make a claim that anything is inexpensive to anyone because it's all relative, we feel that this pricing is low enough for a whole year where to be able to be verified, you don't need to be a massive $10 million a year brand.
Yep. We've got some other questions rolling in. So I think for questions on the pricing tiers, I think Vir spoke to it a little bit. We'll speak to it again, I think, toward the end of the call. So I'm going to hold on some of those. But just know, the difference between tiers. There's some questions around, what you get access to at each of the tiers, Vir. So maybe we could touch on that now or again at the end of the call.
I think it's a good segue now, Peter. Yeah, so I can jump in and tackle some of them. We can also put this link, which is now on our public website, in the chat. You can get onto rangeme.com under supplier pricing, and you'll be able to see exactly what's in here.
Link in. I'm going to put the Startup CPG link in. Vir, that's got the link to our Startup CPG exclusive rates. I don't think it has a link to that $99 a year starter rate, which is a standardized rate, regardless of whether you're in Startup CPG or not. But if you want that rate, you can go to RangeMe, to the page that Vir has. But for the exclusive discounts on the premium or the pro memberships, the link that I just dropped in the chat will have those.
Yeah, and it's a good, again, good timing for me to talk about some of these different tiers. So we looked at verification and the green check mark. The other benefit of our premium tier is being able to see who's looked at you, and we'll cover that in a few minutes. And what you get on the pro tier, which again typically is $24.99, but the Startup CPG discount allows you to get it for $11.99, so practically half the cost, is if you're able to and you're ready for it, and those are big ifs, which we'll talk about again in a few minutes, the ability to get 3 face-to-face meetings at one of our ECRM sessions. So ECRM is RangeMe's parent company. They acquired us 7 years ago. They've been around for 30 years. They have always done face-to-face meetings between brands and buyers, typically specific to a category. So compared to a traditional trade show where you'd have a booth and hope that a buyer for your category walks past, at an ECRM session, we'll send this link out later as well, you'll see the schedule that's coming up. You'll see that it's specific to your category. And typically at the full session, which comes at a higher price point, you have 2 to 3 days of guaranteed pre-scheduled meetings with buyers. What we're trying to do is get more emerging brands to see how impactful these are. Include 3 meetings to begin with instead of 3 days of meetings. And then brands that go and experience those have been coming back and saying, you know what, I actually want to do the whole session next year. I'm going to register for it. So that's the big difference between these 2 tiers, premium and pro. And again, for Startup CPG members, to get that ability at $11.99 for an entire year with everything in premium plus the 3 meetings is a massive, massive discount. So that's the big difference there. And many of you, I think, I'm noticing some familiar brands who have attended ECRM sessions before, so you would be familiar then with them.
Awesome. Quick question on the trending category. Is that something that can be filtered by a buyer that is just a national trend, or is it something that can be filtered to look at like local trends as well? What's the data that feeds that?
Yeah, so the data that feeds this is other buyers in your category and what they're doing. So if I come in here as a buyer and I view all brands, it's saying that these 200 brands have in the most recent past, so that's a couple of months, been interacted with most amongst all other buyers in the category that I have. And in this case, it's snacks. So this will change, the brands will change based on the category. And I'm able to come in here and scroll through. Verified ones, always highlighted at the top.
Perfect. Just a couple other questions and then we can keep going. What is the buyer makeup of RangeMe? Is it mostly larger chains, or how does that break down to independents that are on the platform as well?
Yeah, really good question. So most of the buyers are large chains and regionals. We have 2,000 independents. Independents don't purchase directly on RangeMe. They use Fair, obviously, for that. And they used to use, some of them still use Mabel for it. But they'll come in to discover as well. And then we have a lot of non-traditional retailers as well that we've been adding over the last few years, like the Air Force exchanges or the military exchanges, United and Delta Airlines. universities that are looking for products as well. We try to expand it to anybody that carries CPG products, even if it's an online only retailer. We're happy for them to have access to discover. We leave it in your hands when they reach out and interact to do a little more digging and research to decide whether you want to continue on the conversations with them or not.
And then the last questions that we have here are both kind of around the same topic, but what is the right time for a brand to be on RangeMe, even if it's just the completely free tier, just starting out?
Yeah, for me, I'd say as soon as you're ready to start getting eyes on your product. And so because it's not a direct transactional platform, you don't have to worry about being purchased the day after you jump on. Getting buyers' eyeballs is really important. It takes, in many cases, years to grow your brand awareness. The way I always see RangeMe is one tool of the many. A buyer typically needs 8 to 10 touch points before they actually interact with you. One or several of those touch points could be on RangeMe. The others could be at startup CPG community events, at smaller distributor shows, online, those kind of ways. So sooner the better, because it's never too late to start growing that brand awareness.
Definitely. And then this last question that we've got right now is a great segue, I think, into this second part of the discussion, which is what are other best practices besides, a great photo showing the packaging, special attributes, et cetera, for brands to really maximize the value of their experience on RangeMe, their RangeMe membership fee? How do brands go above and beyond just making sure their page is optimized to get the value out of it?
Yeah, perfect way for us to jump into the brand side of things. So we talked about the cover image and how important it is, the attributes, and how having up-to-date information and the right kind of attributes are so important. Then we go into one of the features, which is retailer opportunities. And think of that like RFPs. It's buyers from particular retail chains saying, I currently have an immediate need for this particular category or this particular attribute. And so rather than browse by myself on RangeMe, I want to put out the application and I will review every single application. And they do. It can be as large as Walmart open call made in USA, which we run every year for Walmart. That typically gets 11,000 applications. The Walmart buyers end up, last year, I think they shortlisted 1,000 brands and they invited them to Bentonville to meet and pitch. It could be a little smaller, but also big in Albertsons Innovation Launchpad. Any of you that were at Expo West would have seen that happen. That application process started on RangeMe. And then Albertsons selected out of 686 brands, 60 to pitch at Expo West. We don't get involved in the pitch or hosting that. It's all between Albertsons and the brand. And you can apply to any of these starting at the $99 tier. And that's why it's so important to know that, yes, Premium and Pro have a lot of other advantages, but if you feel like right now you can't spend on that, it doesn't mean that you're out of the running, because you can apply to all of these right from the $99 tier. I say as the top best practice, and we see brands that are the most successful on RangeMe doing this all the time, log in once a week on a Monday, look at what's open for that week. They typically change only once a week or once every 2 weeks. If there's something that fits the bill for you, put aside half an hour. Sometimes it takes 20 to 25 minutes to do these and apply. If there's nothing that fits your category in that week, that's okay. Check back the week after. A few years ago, we did 40 of these because it was small. It was testing it out. Last year, we did 190. We've already done 110 this year, and it's only Q1 at the end of Q1.
Amazing.
So it is the best way, not just to get the buyer's direct eyeballs, but also to learn what they're looking for. So, it tackles another question. When I do read some negative feedback around RangeMe, and, elephant in the room, there is some of that out there. It's often around, I didn't get into the stores. I wish, trust me, that every single brand that uses RangeMe would get into every store. But unfortunately, it's the buyers that make the decisions. So the opportunity to apply, but also to learn what they're looking for is really critical. For example, every one of these that you apply for, whether you've been selected or not, you'll be able to see here. If you finish submitting it, then it'll say submitted. Otherwise, it'll say not submitted. You were approved, it'll tell you were. If it's still in review, it'll say that as well. And even if you weren't selected, you can come back to it and go, what was Sprouts asking for last year when they ran a private label summit? What were the questions? I don't even remember now. It's been a year. I'm doing so many things for my brand. And you can come back and review all the questions that were asked. These questions are unique to the retailer. They're not part of the standard RangeMe questions when you're building your profile. So even the education around what does Sprouts ask for when they're reviewing this is so important. Same way I can go back and go, what did Cisco ask for when they were doing their diversity campaign in November? Well, here are the questions they asked. Are you in the iTrade network? I've never heard of it. Let me check that out. What's your liability coverage like? Do you have food service distributors? What is your diversity makeup like? And are you certified or not? And those kind of things are really impactful. So it's great education. And once again, you can apply to these starting at the $99 tier. Here's what's open right now. It always has a mix of large retailers and some independents. And then check every week. That's what the most successful brands do. So that's one thing they do. The other piece, if you're on our premium and above tier, is profile insights. Who's looking at you? How did they find you? When did they look at you? And did they look at your entire brand or specific products within the brand? And use that as lead gen. Stalk them on LinkedIn. If it's an independent, Google it, and you'll most likely find their contact info. Try and call them. And here's where you can see the source of the view. And I know, Peter, you have some experience with this, so maybe you can shed some light on this.
Yeah, definitely. And it's also, there's a question in here about what best practices there are to stand out among applications. And Vir hit the nail on the head. So for those that don't know, I lead partnerships with Startup CPG, but I also am head of retail sales for currently a coffee company called Heirloom Coffee Roasters. And I'm a power user on RangeMe. I check every single week to see what reviews we can look at. I apply to those reviews. And then I do exactly what Vir is describing here, where I'm going in, looking at who's looked at the profile, looking at who I can get in touch with, thinking about where that fits into my other current sales prospects and sales processes, right? You know, for us, we have a broker. And so if I see that someone that we're already talking to through the broker has looked at us on RangeMe, that might be a good trigger for me to go reach out to them again directly. You know, for me, this is another touch point in the ecosystem of ways that I'm trying to get in front of a retail buyer. And as you all know, I mean, retail buyers have a million different things competing for their attention. And so if I can find another way to be in front of them through another platform, and for me, if I can get the benefit of that platform by seeing information like this, it gives me another way to just kind of cut through that noise. And so that's what I would say. I saw the question here around, you know, how do we boost conversions and make sure that you're contacting buyers? Exactly that. You know, RangeMe is not an end all be all. It is an important tool in the toolbox. And it's important to do follow up both here and outside of RangeMe as part of your overall strategy to get in front of the buyers.
Yeah, those are really good insights, Peter. And, you know, it's many of you or all of you are probably familiar with Matt from Chlorophyll Water. He uses the profile insights probably better than anyone I've ever seen. And so again, it's a combination of looking at who's looking at you. Like Peter said, if you work with brokers or sales agents, you can tell them if they're already in conversation. You can also invite them to your RangeMe profile if you want to. Many brands do that. Some brands choose not to. Ideal state, you'd be able to see all the buyer's contact info. Again, I would love to share that with everyone, but they don't want us to. You know, at least it's within the realm of your category. And for the independents, like today's organic, If you type that into Google, almost always you'll find their info. So larger chains, of course, it's harder because there's multiple buyers, but stalk them on LinkedIn regardless. And also knowing what they typed in. So it's interesting to know keywords. Like a KE buyer was typing in regenerative organic. Did you show up in collections? And if you did, which collections were those? Was it top performing products? Or was it the women-owned brands collection or sustainability? And continuing to use this again, checking once a week to see who's come up. There are retailers you may never have heard of that you might see have looked at you. Now that's an additional person to add or retailer to add to your sales pipeline. So it's using the insights if you're a subscriber for premium and above. And if you're not, putting in those unique attributes, the right kind of cover image, and applying to as many limited time applications as will fit you. So checking these out once a week, even if you don't get selected, don't be discouraged, that's okay, because the learning you have from answering the questions and knowing what these top retailers are asking for is massive. And then last piece too, I want to touch on our newest feature, which we launched about 2 weeks ago for premium and above brands. Those same NIQ insights you saw on the buyer side, now available for you on the brand side for the first time ever. So I can come in here, I can look at NielsenIQ insights. It's typically hard to get this kind of sales data. You can look at categories that you have products for, so not the entire NIQ platform, but I can look at, let's say, packaged coffee, for example. The subcategories, these are all straight from NIQ. Is it espresso, coffee substitutes? Last 3, 6, or 12 months of data. And you can look at the dollars and units. You also get to see, based on the other products on RangeMe, what are the fastest growing? And that's year-over-year comparison, and the highest selling straight dollar amount. So as you're thinking about your retail strategies, being able to see this, Peter, you have some experience with this kind of data as well, I think.
Yeah, incredibly valuable. And this is the kind of thing that, it's again, when you think about how to equalize the experience for smaller and larger brands, this kind of data can be extremely expensive for brands to get, especially when they're starting out. So to be able to see, hey, what is trending, what are the top products per category, it can give you some really interesting insights. It might be, in this case, hey, what are the size formats that I need to be thinking about based on what's doing well right now? What are the price points that are selling really well in this period? And just some really high level category information that might otherwise be really difficult to get to. So it's really exciting to see the partnership you guys have built there, Vir. And Nielsen is also a really close partner of Startup CPGs. So it's wonderful to see you two working really closely together as well.
Yeah, we're happy to do that. And again, like you said, since they're a great partner to Startup CPG, I think the combination of all three is really impactful. If anyone was wondering, the cookies category in the last 12 months has grown about 7%. It's up to 11.7 billion. And again, this is just Nielsen data or NIQ data. It doesn't involve spins as well. And here are some of the fastest growing, but also top selling products. So I think no surprise on some of the top sellers.
I could see this data very easily making its way into a retailer pitch deck where you're trying to articulate the size of the category and why you're innovating within a certain area. And so maybe you're a better for you cookie brand trying to articulate to whether it's an investor or a retailer you're talking to, the category dynamics of that area. This gives you some really hard and fast data to lean on and say, hey, this is a category that's growing. Maybe you've got another data insight that says that some trait within your cookie or cracker is also growing, and so you can say, hey, like we're innovating in this way within a category that's growing this percent, and that gives you some really cool data to really stand in front of a buyer or an investor and talk about that's rooted in reality. So really, really cool. And Vir, just actually, I'm not even sure the answer to this. Is the NielsenIQ data open to anyone on the platform, anyone at that starter tier, or who gets access to that?
Yeah, that is only on the premium and pro levels. So if
Okay.
you were ever considering doing it and taking advantage of those two big startup CPG discounts, this would be the time, especially now that we've added this as an added benefit. And like you were saying,
Yeah.
Peter, it's being able to use it in your sell sheets, but also at the end of the day, every category manager's got one job really, and that is to grow their category. And yes, they have to look for innovation and all those things, and they have to look for sustainability and diversity, but it has to feed to category growth. And so if the category itself is growing, great, continued opportunity. Even if it's not, that's actually probably even better in some cases for you to step in and go, here's how I am different to the stock standard things that are in this category. You should pick me because I will
Yeah.
actually help you grow your category.
Yeah. A couple of quick fun questions. I don't know if we have frozen cookie dough as a category. I think that's more of a subcategory, but there's a question to see if we can look at that.
Yeah,
I think
I
that would
don't
probably
think.
fall into, I think it's a subcategory within some of these. And so I think some of those are harder for us to look at that level.
Yeah.
But
Let
you
me
can
go up to
take a look and
the,
see if there's a way.
yeah, this is a good time for us to play a little. So let me go into the buyer side where I can see all categories and see if there's I think it's under, I mean, again, this is Nielsen categories are very different and they sometimes change.
Yeah.
So we'll have to come in here and see if there's any cookie dough here. There isn't. So I'll have to figure out where they actually go into in terms of frozen cookie dough. And if anyone knows the exact
Okay.
Nielsen category, let me know because I'll be happy to, look at it that way.
Yeah,
But here's,
I think it would be under desserts,
I think so too.
typically,
Yeah.
but it's a little bit of a maze sometimes to navigate the Nielsen like designations.
I'm still learning
While
some
we're
of them
taking
as
it,
well. Yeah.
yeah. Um, okay, so a couple other questions. Does it hurt a brand if they only have one product, or does it help to have several SKUs?
Yeah, I mean, very good question again. It absolutely doesn't hurt you to have only one product. And I think now, especially with, you've probably heard this term a lot in webinars that the industry's done, SKU rationalization. Many retailers have been reducing the number of SKUs they carry per brand. And so I think it's good to focus on your core offering and don't expand too crazy into too many SKUs because that adds a lot more cost to you. And obviously right now, balancing profitability is the most important thing. So
Yeah.
answer,
And Veer,
yeah,
actually,
it's okay.
if you look back at the that first page that we looked at for the buyer view, I think there was something like 16 or 17,000 products and about 7,000 brands. So the quick math on that is like,
Two and a half.
two and a half
Yeah.
products per brand, right? So, there's a lot of brands there that probably have one product. There's a lot of brands that probably have maybe 5 individual products, but mostly pretty limited assortment, I would assume.
Yeah, especially with the emerging brands and in the food and beverage category. Of course, if you're in beauty, cosmetics, home houseware, those tend to be way more SKU heavy. Like a candle company, it isn't crazy that they might have 50 different scented candles. But it's so challenging in food and beverage that going slowly and having really good market pickup in your core SKU is way more impactful than having too many and then you're worried about sell through and velocity with those SKUs.
Yep. Okay. Are there any fees other than the membership fees to sell products on RangeMe?
Yeah, there are no other fees. The only time you may have to pay additionally to ECRM is if you apply to some of those limited time campaigns I talked about, and I'll go back and pull them up. And there is a direct meeting with the buyer attached that ECRM is facilitating. So they've taken care of the logistics and all of it. In some cases, those have a $300 fee or a $500 fee, and it will be called out before you even apply. So when you go to apply, read it. And this is a perfect example. If you're selected by this particular retailer, so natural grocers, then the meeting is held and facilitated by ECRM at the ECRM skincare session. and then there's an additional fee for the logistics and everything that's involved with it. If it's something like the Albertsons Innovation Launchpad, where they met at Expo West, there's no additional fee. It will always be called out, so there won't be any surprises.
Amazing. And Vir, just out of curiosity, because there is a tier that we have worked on together that includes a couple of those meetings, if someone is an upgraded member through the Startup CPG link and they have those 3 meetings, if they were selected for something like that, would that be considered one of those meetings potentially?
It wouldn't be considered one of those meetings. We can get them 3 meetings anyway. And if you are ever in a situation where you're like, hey, I'm going to this session already to have those 3 meetings, but I also got selected by Natural Grocers, can you waive the fee? Write to me and we'll take care of it for you. It's so nuanced that it's on like literally a case-by-case basis. And the good thing is, first apply. It'll be amazing if you're selected, and then we can work out the fee with you if we're facilitating that meeting. In most cases, we're not facilitating the meeting, and so there's no additional fee attached.
And I would say I've applied to probably 100 of these different programs over the last couple of years, or maybe like 50 of these different programs, and I think 2 of them had a fee attached to them. So it's the exception, not the rule, in my experience.
And it's a guaranteed meeting at that point, so you can make that decision breathing a little more easy.
Exactly. Okay, we've got 10 minutes or so left. Vir, is there any other topics that you want to get through? Because we have a few more questions we can cover, and we can just kind of do Q&A if not.
Yeah, I think we can stop now. I just want to recap everything that we talked about, and I'll maybe go back to the buyer side, so we're just looking at the whole buyer view of things. But to recap it all starts with the category settings. So ensuring that you're selecting up to 2 of the best fitting categories per SKU is really important. That way you get seen by all types of buyers that would potentially be a fit for you. Once that's done, then you've got the cover image that's really impactful. And you saw some of those examples, and that is having very clear packaging, calling out the unique attributes, and highlighting the certifications. Also ensuring that the general product information you have is up to date, from your distributors to the certifications to the retail stores you're in. There's the currently sold at field. And so if you update that, that's important for buyers to see as well. On the brand side, it's applying to those limited time applications. All you have to do is be on the $99 tier. So it really isn't a barrier for anybody. And it's $99 a year, just as a reminder. Learning what questions are being asked when you do apply to those. And then checking every time if you're on the premium and pro level to see what views you have. If it's an independent, Google them. Almost always going to find their contact info. If it's a national chain or regional, it's one additional touch point. Try to stalk them on LinkedIn. Use the word stalk, yes. If you're using a broker, let your broker know about them, because maybe, like Peter was saying, the broker's already got them in the pipeline. And use the amazing Startup CPG retail sales tracker to add to that pipeline as well. So this is one tool to keep adding more and more views and potential retailers to sell to your pipeline. So that's a good recap. Maybe we can answer the rest of the questions that are here, Peter.
Awesome. Yeah. So a couple questions on the recording. We are going to share the recording. It will be uploaded to our YouTube page within the next few days. And everyone who's registered for the webinar is going to get a copy of this recording in their inbox as well. So we are going to share that. I know some people had to drop off early or were only able to join late. So you'll get a copy of this in your inbox. Just, to follow up on the fees, there's no commission that's paid to RangeMe. I just want to be clear on that.
Yeah, no commission. And it's a really impactful one too, because we can't ever guarantee sales from the platform. Ultimately, that decision rests with the category managers, and in some cases, their chief merchant. We can get you exposure to them, an opportunity to apply to those campaigns, but there's no guaranteed sales, and we'll never get involved in any of the commission pieces if you're doing business with them.
Perfect. Vir, while we're looking at this page, is there any way for buyers to discover ethnic brands on on the platform? I don't know if you guys have a way of differentiating them or identifying them.
Yeah, we have categories for international foods. So within food and beverage, there is an international food category where if you are an international food company that fits one of these tiers, you can put yourself in one of these categories. And of course, then you can use keywords as well that might prompt that. So if you have Asian inspired flavors, it still gets me, by the way, my heritage is Indian, so it still gets me that Indian isn't part of Asian in a lot of these discussions, but I'm not going to solve geography today for the retail space, so I won't get into that. But let's say you're looking for both and you have those categories saved, then you'll be able to come in here and see brands that have products within those categories. And I think I still have snacks selected, so I would have to unselect snacks for this example. And then I'm coming in and that's what I'm seeing. So that's where the two categories come in play too. Let's say you have Asian inspired flavors, but it's a snack bar. Clara from Unite, great example, and her internationally inspired flavorings, she could have them in both categories, the international foods one, but also the snack bar category.
Awesome. We've got a question here about, again, going back to like the range of buyer and retailer makeup on the platform, specifically around like a given geography. From my understanding, if you're on the platform, you're accessible to all buyers, regardless of their location, et cetera. As long as they have the category that you play in, you'll be accessible to them, right?
That's exactly right. We try not to limit it and not to limit your exposure. You get seen by everyone that's on the platform. If they have your category selected, then you can decide whether it makes sense to engage further with that retailer or not. The makeup, again, is all top national chains you can think of, the top regional and mid tiers as well, all the way down to a couple of thousand independents and many non-traditional retailers. There is a link as well that we can share in the chat, and that is some of our top retail partners. And you can come down here and scroll through the list and see all of them listed on here. We don't have all the independents listed because obviously that is part of the proprietary piece of it. So let me put that in the chat.
It'd be a long list as well.
It'd be a long
list.
Thousands. Yeah, exactly.
Amazing. Let's drop that in the chat, and then I'm also going to drop. Actually, Vir, can you? Here, I'll drop that actually. Okay, so that's the Startup CPG link to the discount page, and this is the RangeMe link to all the retailers. One other question on this data piece. So we have a question from Michelle around, hey, it might be worth thinking about a different tier. The data would be really helpful, but only if I can access this data at the category level that I play at. So maybe could you take a second to talk about like what data you have access to that's not necessarily that category view that we looked at, but there's also data in the individual page that you have around each of your individual SKUs, correct?
Yeah, so good point as well. So you've got the ability to see at all times how many retailers have viewed your product, whether they've viewed it, which is, they're scrolling through and it's like an impression, or they've spent time to click into your profile in particular. The conversions are typically they've requested a sample or sent you a message. If they did ever send you a message, and I'm glad we asked the question because I missed this piece in the demo, you'd actually see exactly who the buyer is that has requested that. And most often, they'll include their email address in that conversation. That's another piece around, and I have to address it, when I see brands that say we didn't get anything, even just facilitating this connection is a really impactful part of the profile or the platform. My top trick here, let's say a buyer requests a sample, it's from a national chain, and all they've done is, I'd like a sample of your products. Before you respond and send them the samples, what you could say is, happy to send you samples. Could you share your email address so I can send you the tracking info? And you'll notice that most likely they are happy to do that and they'll share their email address with you. And then you can send them the samples, but you also then have their email address. But you always get the name of the buyer when they reach out. And here are all the different types of buyers, going back to the question, everyone from small to national to regional that have interacted with and reached out and facilitated conversations with this brand. Unfortunately, we don't have an accurate count of exactly who ends up doing business with you because we don't know. But the idea of facilitating the connections and the exposure is what the platform's all about.
Yeah. Awesome.
Here's another good example.
Yeah, that's exactly what we're looking at. Amazing. And yeah, I mean, if you actually open that up again, Vir, real quick, like as a brand on the platform, I would do exactly what Vir just said. You know, I would look to get their email. I know now the buyer's name, what store they're calling from, and I can go and do my own sales prospecting via LinkedIn. I sit down probably once a week and just spend an hour on LinkedIn or 30 minutes on LinkedIn, sending a ton of notes out to people. And a lot of those come from the interactions on RangeMe, and then others come from interactions outside the platform or just my own prospecting list of who I want to get in front of. And it's it's definitely a really important part of the puzzle, right? Like you can't be passive when it comes to selling your product. This is an important part of that overall solution, that overall equation for me. But being able to see who's looking at you and getting their name is an important piece of that. So
yeah, I know we're pretty tight on time, Peter. So I did mention earlier to you, I think, not to everyone that had joined, and for those that stayed on, there's a good reason you did. We're going to give away 2 subscriptions. So one on the pro tier that has those meetings, and then one on the premium level. So what kind of questions do we want to ask? I think you and I have a lot of leeway there, Peter, in terms of the like the trivia. So one of the things I was thinking is looking at a particular category and just guessing before I actually show it live, how many products we would have on RangeMe in that category.
I love it. We can do some trivia.
You get to pick the category, and then I'll ask, and then we'll have to look at the chat to see who's answering.
Let's click into Frozen real quick. Let's see what the options are in Frozen. And let's do.
And we can do all of Frozen if we need to.
Yeah, let's do all of Frozen.
All right. So before I go into the browse section, your closest guess, and I don't know if we want to go Price is Right style where it's without going over or not, but I'll leave that up to you, Peter.
Okay, let's just go. Let's go closest without going over.
All right. The number of brands on RangeMe that have at least one product in the Frozen category.
All right, and I've got a bunch of some folks are sending it just to you and I. Some folks are sending it to the total chat. So we'll give everyone another 30 seconds to put their guesses in.
And this will be for a year membership on our premium tier. And then we'll do the next one for a year membership on our pro tier, which will have those 3 meetings attached as well.
Amazing.
I see a lot of chat bubbles.
I love it. So. Yeah.
Okay, shall we call it? We're going to go in and browse. So
all right.
It's literally right now time stops for your guessing.
All right.
5,600 brands with 13,000 products.
brands. All right, let's see. We've got Ali at 5,000. Do we have anyone closer? 40. Oh man, we had a lot of close ones around the 5,000. 5,672 was so close, Peter.
I'll let you decide, Peter, because I feel like that's close.
I think we said 50. We said closest without going over. So I think
fair enough.
I think Ali is closest.
Ali, please write to me, Peter, if you want to should I drop my email in the chat for everybody?
Yeah, please drop your email in the chat. I also will say, I'm going to volunteer you, Vir, but Vir has been very, very open to meeting with a lot of brands one-on-one if you want to go through your own brand profile on RangeMe. And, I've been the fortunate recipient of that attention myself. And it's been incredibly helpful understanding kind of what, even just in the brand that I operate, what category, the category that I'm in, what helps people stand out. So I would encourage you to make that connection, especially if you're considering the premium membership, just to make sure you're getting everything you need out of it.
So that's one. And then the second one we're going to do is I'm going to choose salty snacks, but you get to choose, Peter, the subcategory. And we're going to ask, we'll actually go into the brand side. Give me a second. We're going to ask to guess what to have access to it, what the sales data would look like before I choose the subcategory for a particular subcategory. So you get to choose which one, and then the closest again, NielsenIQ sales data for the last 12 months for this particular subcategory.
All right, let's give it a little scroll. Let's say, all right, good. Let's go to the top again.
How about that one?
I think we go. I'm very curious about the meat snack segment specifically. Okay. I think that's one that's like, I've seen a lot of new brands in that category, so I'm very curious what that is. So what are folks guessing for this one?
So they're guessing to the left. You can see what the category sales number is. That's for all salty snacks. We're guessing what that sales number looks like for meat snacks. And yeah, I don't know if you could really go over in this because it's into the billions or several hundred millions.
All right. So on this one, same thing, closest without going over.
Yeah, and closest to I'll show you an example of a subcategory. So corn chips is 1.5 billion. So you could guess to the hundreds of millions. You don't need to guess to the dollar. But man, if someone pulls that off, you should buy a Powerball ticket today.
Yeah, exactly. All right. We're gonna give it.
We'll give it some time. Yeah. And while that's happening, Ali, remember to send me a note about your complimentary subscription that you won, and congratulations, by the way. I know you probably can't see me because you look at my screen, but I'm giving you 2 big thumbs up.
All right.
All right. I'm seeing the guesses flowing in. I'm not reading them. I'm just looking at the chat bubble count. So.
I know. All right. I think we should lock it in.
All right. It's locked in. So I see the chat bubble count at 30.
Milton's the last one. All right.
2.5 billion.
2.5 billion. All right. Let's see where we got.
And by the way, when it decides to load, here are some of the top fastest growing products, and no surprise, some of the highest sellings.
We had a couple guesses that were just barely over, guys. Let's see, we got 1.6 basically.
And what's interesting to me while you're looking through that, Peter, for everyone else that's still on here, is even though it looks like there's quite a few new entrants, I do also feel like the general consensus is moving more towards a plant-based snacking diet. And so the overall sales aren't growing that much. It's, barely a 0.2% year-over-year change.
All right. I think Mark is closest without going over at about 1.6. We had a lot of guesses that were in the 2.7, 2.8 billion range, but Mark is the closest at 1.6.
All right, there you go, Mark. Remember, I put my email in the chat, so please remember to reach out, and I will officially stop sharing my screen.
All right. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Vir, thank you for hosting today, and really, really awesome session today. Again, guys, I'd recommend if you are currently a RangeMe subscriber or considering it, to reach out. I'm just gonna. Oh, thank you, Edlin. I'm gonna review the answers and make sure we have the right winner here, and so I'll follow up with both of you guys directly. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks for joining, everyone. And as Peter said, please reach out personally to me. My email is in the chat. If you ever need anything one-on-one, I'm happy to help. Thanks, Peter. Appreciate your hosting.
Email. Let's drop your email one last time for everyone.
I'll do that. Yeah, let me just do that. I'm also very easy to find on LinkedIn. I'm the only person with my first and last name combined. So type that in and you won't find anybody else on there.
All right, I'm going to drop this for everyone.
Yeah, Courtney, send me a note. I'll be happy to do that. It's only 99. I'm more than happy to do that.
Awesome. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Peter.
Bye.